Thank you, Jean-Nicolas. Thank you all for being here. Maybe I need to clarify my affiliation. I'm currently a Robert Schuman Chair at the European University Institute in Florence, Italy, but I'm about to transition to Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada, where I take up the Canada Excellence Chair in Migration and Integration. And I'm thrilled and excited about this new opportunity, and I'm also actually quite challenged by the opening up of this conference, and which just reminds us of how complex asylum and migration is and how diachronic it is, how it is part of human history. I'm always concerned in these conferences that I feel we're preaching to the converted. All the 1,300 people that we are participating in this conference are somehow converted to thinking positively about the promise of migration. So I'm always concerned as to how we need to open up and listen to what is happening in the streets. Maybe this is less the case in Canada. It is certainly the case in Europe and in many other world regions where people are concerned and think migration is a crisis. And while I very much welcome the global compacts, and I very much agree with Michelle Klein-Salomon and Fabio Baggio about the promise that is in the global compacts and how important they are as a step forward in acknowledging that we are interdependent and that we need to think of the challenges of migration and how to turn them into opportunities together. I'm a little bit concerned about the compacts overly emphasizing a paradigm of regulated, safe and orderly migration that we, and I would say we in this conference, who are both researchers and practitioners, know is largely not the case, it's not the reality, and oftentimes it's not possible. So I would be concerned that we might forget about all the rest that is non-regulated, non-orderly and unsafe. And you might say, okay, but where do we go from here? So I want to say that we need to inject into our thinking very much the notion of uncertainty. Migration is very much part and parcel of wider socioeconomic transformations in the way we work, our welfare, the way we travel, the way we communicate, whether we feel what we have is enough or whether we feel deprived, and how we plan ahead. So, and we know all these socioeconomic elements in our lives are particularly uncertain today because the pace of change is quite sustained. And I want to say that uncertainty, the way I propose it, is very different from risk. Because in the language of the compacts, we speak a lot about risk. Risk is a very modern notion, which is part and parcel of this thinking of linear progress. So risk can be quantified. We all know that in the financial crisis, risk was insured, financial risk was insured, and the well-being, the economic well-being of the country was judged by the level of the insurance interest for insuring its financial risk. But I think in migration, we cannot define this risk and prevent it. We were also told that the problem was that we didn't foresee the Syrian crisis. So on one hand, we have the routine normalcy, and on the other hand, we have crisis. So if it is not safe, orderly, and regulated, we're in crisis. And I'm arguing this is not the way we should think and plan ahead. We should factor in uncertainty and acknowledge that our solutions to migration have to be dynamic. They have to change as things change. There's no silver bullet. We need, I think that was of course emphasized by both Michelle and Fabio in this panel, and I would say even in the opening talks today, that it is multi-stakeholder. We need to bring in all the actors and factors involved, not just the states or not just the UN. But beyond that, I think what we need is to acknowledge and tell the public, tell these non-converted that are not in this room today, that there is ambiguity, there is uncertainty, like in all walks of life, and we will try to manage this. There will be no silver bullet, there will be no only safe and orderly and regulated migration, and that we need to live with this. And we need to move on from acknowledging this, and that there will be that sometimes migration will be a moving target, and the moment we will think we have found the balance point, the balance will tip off, and we will need to think again. But To give an example, because you might say this is all too generic, too theoretical, okay, these researchers in their ivory towers, how can they help the policymakers? So, for instance, I want to say a small critical word about all these systems that try to regulate migration per category, per nationality, per region, per city, per profession, clearly classify what are the conditions you have to meet, and once these are ticked, you can go. And I want to say that, for instance, we should experiment more with systems of what is called enhanced mobility. So either bilateral or even regional enhanced mobility regimes. You might think the European Union is the most advanced of these systems, but it is not the only one. In Latin America, there is such a system of a relatively free mobility. The ECOWAS is trying to implement one, and I think we need to think twice about all the costs that we do away with when we don't do all these very strict controls and regulations, and all the dynamic potential of human agency that we unleash if we let people operate in a more open system within a certain set of preconditions. Let people do the work, let the economy, the welfare systems, the support organizations do the work, rather than try first to tick all the boxes. So this was my 2 pennies of thought for this panel, and I look forward to your questions.